Lightly. I give up. Hey, anyway, all right. See, I'm already online. Hey, good evening, LinkedIn. Dave Wilson, the Ring of Hire Show. Hey, we are back. We got I want to say the fabulous floor, the LinkedIn floor. I was trying to think of all different things with four today, but I couldn't come up with anything, team. I don't think. Kylie, I tried. Eric, I tried, man. I couldn't.
I'll work on it.
It's okay.
Yeah, for the top four. Hey, listen, tonight we got a great show. We're going to be talking about how the remote work has changed the employment. So the employment world. So we'll be right back after this. It is Wednesday. It's hump day. I guess they call that, right?
Mm-hmm. I always think of the Camel commercial.
Yep.
The office. When I say Camel, that sounds like I'm talking about cigarettes. The commercial with the camel.
Look at Jason. Jason, you're looking up at Kylie. You're not used to this, are you?
Not anymore.
No, we got Kylie on top, and Jason, you are.
I'm on mute.
There you go.
So I. Every great professional works with at least two monitors, if not sometimes three monitors. So I was looking at my monitor above my monitor, wasn't necessarily looking at Kylie yet, but she can look down on me all day long here.
Yep, she can look down. She's going to be like that.
I would never.
The Brady Bunch. Hey, look at who's on there from Facebook. Kenny Dunner. Kenny is on there. Look at that on Facebook. Kylie makes something. Look at that. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn, but can't see my comments there. Well, Kenny, we can see you. Mike, Kylie makes someday show brighter than the sun. All right.
Thanks, Mike. Very sweet.
Yeah, see. How you doing, Eric? We missed you last week.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I was like, I really wanted to be there too, but I could not get out of the commitment that I had.
Yeah, it was a good show. We had a good time. Jason.
Like the kids.
Yeah, you still on. Jason, you're on mute.
That's all right. That's right. I'm typing away. I'm multitasking here.
Oh wow! I was like, what?
He's googling the topic for tonight so that he has some answers.
Exactly.
I got some answers.
He's pulling it up on LinkedIn because he just realized he had no idea what we were actually discussing this evening
with the show.
I didn't even know we were live yet. No, I'm joking.
No, I thought today that Kylie would be the one that would stand out on this show for some reason. This is her this is her topic. This is her baby. Working from home and how the workplace has changed. Look at Kenny. Welcome to the show, Eric. Ooh, he's like our sidekick over there. All right, working from home. Jason, the first question is going to go to you.
Sure.
All day I was trying to think of different things. It's had to have changed the human resource aspect of it, hasn't it?
Oh yeah. Yes. Now, there's so many laws, Dave, and then there's been so many complications that have come through COVID and how people have handled it, and it's been a very complicated situation. On top of it being an employee relations nightmare for HR to deal with, who gets to work from home, who doesn't, jobs, the turnover that it's created because of people leaving one sort of profession where you have to be in the office versus going to a different profession. It's completely changed the entire work and setting and work environment, with COVID specifically. Now, I've been working from home primarily for the last 10 plus years. So I was kind of one of the things that kept me at my company, big thing that kept me at my company. When I was there, but
they had that back in Sears.
Yeah. Yeah, as they were, because they
Oh.
were really exiting facilities and trying to save money by exiting facilities. And with that, it really caused a big push to, send their folks home, well before COVID. And I took advantage of it. And again, it was a big benefit. It was a big fringe benefit for a lot of people to stay there. But again,
Right.
with COVID, it opened up the doors to many other roles and opportunities. But for people to leave that one benefit that Sears really had over as an employment benefit over others and go elsewhere. But yeah, definitely changed the whole game, as you would say.
I didn't even notice that Kenny. So here we go. Mr. Santa Claus looking suave, debonair, sophisticated, stellar. Thank you, Kenny. That's got to be me, Eric. It's because it's the white beard.
I think that's to you, Dave.
Yeah, I think he's got it there for it. Eric, do you get a lot of people asking for remote work anymore?
It's a toss up, really, depending on what the position is. I see a lot more people asking for hybrid, more so than working strictly from home, because I didn't realize it until I started going back into the office of how much I actually missed being in the office, being around the team and leadership and to that nature. So I'm a full believer that hybrid is probably the best way to go, if not, working from the office now. But I do understand the work from home. But, at the same time, it's not for everybody, because if they don't have structure in their life, they can't be successful.
It's got to change a lot of people. Like I never heard of really remote work until COVID. I mean, that's the first time I really ever heard of it. I mean, I didn't realize that Sears or anybody, did they do that? Kylie, did they do that before it was COVID?
Yeah, Eric and I we had the opportunity. We had 1 day a week that we would work from home. Or was it 2? Did we change it? I don't remember.
It was 2. Yeah.
I think we started with 1 and ended with 2 beforehand. And then, but they were open to it. It was kind of an earned thing. I want to say, what was it? 3 months I got 1, at 6 months I got 2. And then it stayed at that, I think.
And if we thought that you wouldn't goof off at home, basically,
right.
Somebody could continue being. But I mean, when COVID hit, I actually found everybody on my team, because during that time, I guess that's when I started managing the entire nation. I found that everybody was working harder. One, they didn't want to get furloughed. But 2, you log onto your computer at 8 a.m. instead of driving to the office at 8 a.m., getting there by 9 or whatever. And you just start working. And then all of a sudden you don't even realize it's 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night. And, if you've got kids, they're like, when's dinner? I'm like, when I get off work. And, you sit there and you turn around and go, when did it become 7?
Yep.
Wow. So
I still do it. I do. I feel like I consistently pull 50 to 60, sometimes 70-hour weeks, and it's choice. Like I have my kids every other week, so I'm probably a little bit more conscious of logging off by 6 o'clock at night on the nights that I have them. But my son has soccer practice on Mondays and Wednesdays at 4:30. I pack up my laptop. He doesn't get done until 6, so I sit at his soccer practice and I work from there. So yeah, I feel like I work significantly more. And also, and Eric will attest to this, I've always been of the mindset that my hiring managers can reach out to me anytime, day or night, and I will jump if it is something they need. If they're just asking to ask, then probably not. But if they're like, look, they have a competitor offer, I really need to get this out, and it's 9 o'clock at night. Okay, I'm going to jump on and take care of it. I've always been that way. But then I find myself on the computer. So I'm like, well, I'll just go ahead and address this email while I'm here. So I have on numerous. Eric, do you remember when we were at Sears and we had that hiring event, and it was like 3 or 4 nights in a row that I worked until like 1 or 2 in the morning?
Oh yeah, no. And there was,
blew it up. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Remote work does have advantages.
Yeah, I mean, there was that one hiring event that we did. I worked from 8 o'clock that morning, and the hiring event was in Hawaii. So of course, there's 6 hours difference from the East Coast.
That was when I was running the West Coast and Hawaii.
Yeah, I literally passed out at 12:45 at night going, I'm done. And then I totally missed a call from the actual general
I
manager.
remember that.
I was like, you got to be kidding me right now.
Yep.
Jason, I can imagine. Mike says here, and we should talk about the fact that people work over 40 hours, and that's what I believe that's what he's gearing that towards, and rarely get paid for it.
Well,
But I mean, I get that, but I'm going to be the advocate tonight, to where I'm going to be the person that, not the negative one, but on a company standpoint, I'll be that one. I'm going to take the bullets on that one. I shouldn't even say that. Jesus, can you, Jason, when you look at somebody, say they're working 20 hours a week overtime, constantly, they get burned out working remote. Is that something there again? I blame it. That's on them though, right? I mean,
well, it is and it isn't, Dave. I mean, so when you have a work schedule where you're in person in office, a lot of times those people have a job where they can just leave that laptop there at the office, or leave their computer at the office, go home, disconnect. Don't have to worry about it until the next day when they go back. So there is a benefit to being in office, because to Mike's point, it's on you to kind of shut it down when you work from home. But if you have we also have these things, these cell phone thingers, and we used to have little beepers on our side back in the day. But there's laughing.
But, how old are you, Jason? I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
going to say I had a beeper.
But when the boss comes a ringing, what are you going to do? You're going to ignore the person. So again, there is those boundaries, but to be able to disconnect, and hey, can you just look up this, or I need a response to that, or hey, you get pulled in. So
but don't you think that's part of the payoff, or is not? I mean, I'm just
saying. I think there's a standpoint of, yes, that is part of the payoff of working remote, as long as it's not abused, right? So there's always that point that hey, this is like a little too much, right? You're sending me an email, it's 11 o'clock at night, expecting me to respond before the next morning. There's a point at which but it's all specific on the role, Dave. I mean, you're an executive and you're pretty much working 24/7. You're on calls 24/7, vacations and so forth. I mean, if someone's getting paid $500,000 a year or more, I don't know if there's really a time where you're really shutting the computer down and you're ignoring it till the next day, right? So, but if someone's making $65,000 a year, is that really an expectation that they're working, well into the evening and responding within a couple hours? So again, there's some specific, there is a little bit of expectation more to work beyond the normal hours, maybe if you work remote, because of the ease, but setting your own little, little barrier to working too many hours. But again, there's always that level of, this is a little bit, you're abusing the privilege, right? As the boss, you're abusing the privilege of someone being able to respond.
I don't like it. I personally, myself, that's just me. Yeah. I'm looking at Kylie. I'm waiting for her to jump. I just don't like remote, because I've been there with that results. When I did the staffing, like you said, it was like in the morning, all of a sudden it's 1 o'clock already. I'm like, holy Jesus. I didn't take a break. And then when I did, I'd come back over. Oh, I got an idea. And then I'm back up to 1 o'clock in the morning. And that was just me. And that's why I think I like more of the structure. That's what I missed. I missed the office. But hybrid, I think I like the hybrid now too, because you can have 1 or 2 days of your choice if you want.
Yeah, you gotta set it. Like even me, I was an executive at Sears. I let it be known, unless it's emergency. I kind of shut it down 5, 6 o'clock in the evening till 9. Did my family time, and then I would go back on after 9 or 10 o'clock at night, before I went to bed, just to see if there's anything that was emergent that I really needed to respond to before I went to bed. I kind of set my own things, but I also set that expectation with my boss that, hey, unless it's an emergency from these hours, I'm disconnected. It's family time. That's, so again, you got to kind of set that up with your employer, with your boss at work, to say, what are the expectations of and if their expectation is way too much, then maybe that's not the company for you, right? Or maybe you do need to, kind of have a heart-to-heart with them of what's being expected from that role. So that way there is some guidelines.
And that, Michael Duran, do you think there's a reward for being remote? I think that person was just talking. And then this LinkedIn user, I believe, is Allison. She only came up last time as a LinkedIn user. When I worked on the East Coast or on the West Coast of searches, oh yeah, that's a big thing, the time difference. I can imagine how that works.
Yeah, I set parameters in Sears though with that. I remember saying, like, if a candidate wants to talk to me, they will talk to me during my business hours. At Sears, I left and I didn't work unless I had something like a hiring event or something that required the extra attention. And not because my employer or my management or my seniors ever asked me to do that. It was choice. I wanted to do those things.
Right.
I think a lot of times, should you be required to work 50, 60, 70 hours a week? No, I think that's unfair. I can confidently say that Sears never asked me to. My current employer has never asked me to. I also think that it is okay to be the kind of person who says, I'm willing to sacrifice that extra 20 or 30 hours to get where I want in the future of my career. What I'm doing right now, my boss does it every single day. At 5 o'clock, he's like, get off the computer. I'm like, oh, okay. But never once have I been asked to do anything like that. My hiring managers come to me because I have set the precedent that they can. They don't go to the other talent acquisition partners. They come to me because they know that they can. And nobody is faulted for that. It is a decision that I have made because I know where I want my career to be in the next 5 years. And I know that these are the things. So he said, do you think that it pays off? I do. I think that it just depends on what you're looking for. I think people who have gotten to where they want in their careers, yes, that 40 to 50 hours is fine. Log off. There's nothing that can't wait until the morning. That's okay. But I also think it's okay to choose to go farther if that's what you feel is going to benefit you in the long run, or the company or your future goals. I just think that it's not a blanket statement as an answer.
Right. Allison says, yep, but being at home, I could buy some of that time back during the day. It was a candidate or be hiring managers. It wasn't required, but Monday through Thursday, I am all in. Great street cred.
I mean, just in general, just to back up, continue on what Kylie was saying is that, I put in my time. I put in my time where I worked all the extra hours. And, when we were at Sears, I would be checking my emails on the hour, every hour until I went to bed. And I would go to bed probably 1 o'clock in the morning. But I put in my time because I wanted to build my knowledge base, right? I wanted to make sure that I knew what I was doing so that I can move up. And, to Kylie's point, where I'm now at, literally it's like 5:15 and my boss is talking to me on the phone and she will say, get out of the office. Because she knows that I have a drive to get back home. But, and she will very rarely, or anybody for that matter, unless it's unless it's an emergency, do I get a phone call past 6 o'clock at night, and it's not so much that I feel like I've earned it, but I put in the hours so that I knew how to change it for people and say, listen, you don't, there's nothing that's really an emergency at this hour.
Jason, is that something, why do companies, you think anymore, you see it on the news all the time, but why do they want people back now? Before it was, we all knew why, with COVID, but we passed that stage. But now it seems to be a big headache for some companies. They want you back, or they're giving you a vertebrae and saying, no, you're going to lose your job.
Well, first off, there's lots of different reasons. One, certain jobs can't be done by home effectively, right? A lot of research jobs, lab jobs, obviously customer facing roles. They just can't be done in person. Nurses, hospitals, firefighters and police and stuff like that. They're first responders. Those types of jobs, just not something that can be done at home. So the type of job, one, has a lot to do with it. Two, so you have certain jobs that you have to be in the office, and then the company has a 1 million square foot building with only 200 people in it. There's definitely a reason why they want people to come back in. They have this facility that, right now they can't offload, or they don't want to offload because they need some sort of facility. So they do want to, bring people back in. Obviously any town around around those major companies obviously want them to come back in. Look at us, Dave, nearby. I mean, the city of Trenton is suffering. Yeah. Trenton, New Jersey is suffering because 65% of their business in the city of Trenton came from the state of New Jersey, because the state of New
Right.
Jersey's, offices are there. So they're begging the state to force those people to come back to the work just to have economic revival in that city. So there's
because of all the restaurants and
all the
everything.
restaurants, the business, the delis and everything like that are in those areas are suffering when those companies don't have people that are going in and out. So there's an economic, political standpoint to that. And then there is definitely also a benefit to people coming together in person for certain meetings and to have a staff meeting together. There is, I love being remote, right? And I had great staff meetings with everyone that was remote on the computer virtually. We did fun stuff. We played games. We dressed up. We shared recipes. We did all that, the stuff that you're supposed to do. But it does not beat an in-person. It does not beat an in-person staff meeting, no matter how well you run that meeting. In-person will always be a more effective staff meeting or a more effective creative planning meeting, budgetary meeting, whatever type of meeting you're trying to do, project management meeting. So there is a good reason to have some sort of hybrid situation. But can you do it fully remote? Of course you can do these things fully remote, but so there is that benefit to there. But yeah, there's definitely a reason why companies absolutely want those people in there. And I'm sure there is also, and I'm not trying to hide away from it, there is definitely a trust factor, I'm sure, with several managers of performance of employees that, they don't trust that the employee's doing that. They heard about this thing, through COVID where people were working 2 different jobs from home because, and they get this thing, well, I haven't heard back from this person in 4 hours. What the heck are they doing? Why aren't they responding to my call or my email? They must be working another job. They must be at the park playing with their kids and not working. So yeah, there's this level of trust that's also impacting it. And a lot of companies are still navigating what to do. Who gets to work from home? Who has to be in person?
That's got to be a hard decision, boy. I can imagine that.
From a trust perspective, and that's the reason why we're talking about this tonight, right? Because there's a lot of those things that we look into. So anyway, I'm done talking.
No, it's okay. Kenny says he understands me. Jason understands me. He knows what I'm talking about. Michael, this conversation for the age now, vested interest, who wants to go back the old way versus a lot of new companies built completely remote. And I can see that. And Kylie, the trust issue. What do you feel the issue is there on the trust issue? And how do you think some managers, I could see how that could happen. I really could. Yeah. But if you're... Some of the reasons I was looking here, like say you taking your child to your soccer game, you do this. Somebody, and there's supposed to be a meeting at a certain time. They're saying some people might have a doctor's appointment with their family member that they can't take, and it was just giving all kinds of excuses to try to get everybody to come into one meeting, and it was getting tougher for some of the companies to do that.
Well, I think for meetings, it needs to be done if you expect solid attendance, if it's mandatory, if your whole company, that needs to be done in advance, because even if I'm in office, if I have a doctor's appointment, I'm going to my doctor's appointment. That's not any different in office or remote. My expectation for my ability to take care of myself and not have to put my job ahead of that doesn't change whether I'm working from home or not. Now, I can't get on a meeting because I'm sitting at soccer practice. That seems unacceptable, especially if it's during business hours, but I don't. I'm still able to get on. So I think just being realistic, I've had companies, one of the girls was like, everybody be jealous. I'm going to be working from the pool in Vegas on Friday. A director was on there, management. They don't care. They're not hiring people they can't trust. Do your job from where you need to do your job, but do your job. But I also think the expectation from management needs to be realistic as well. If I need to go to a doctor's appointment and you schedule a mandatory meeting, if I was in office and I didn't come to that meeting because you watched me walk out the door to go to my doctor's appointment, is that any different? It's on your calendar.
No, I agree with you.
Notifying you that I have a doctor's appointment and won't be in office as a remote employee, not okay. So I think a lot of the trust is just, even Jason said it, like a lot of companies still don't know how to do it. I think
that's what I mean. That you brought a good point there.
I think that they're not setting proper parameters. I think they're not setting solid expectations. And I don't think that that's intentional. I think it's because they don't know how. But it would be great if you would get some of these people getting involved in meeting of the minds. I can very confidently say the company I'm with now has this down to a science. Our entire team is remote. We're all over the country. We have weekly team meetings, and everybody rallies. It is great. It is honestly, I enjoy them more than I used to enjoy some of my other companies with in-person meetings. We're more vested. I know more about these people's families, even though I haven't met them. Like there's a true team environment here. If I need to go do something, if something comes up last minute, I have that ability. I have that autonomy. If I jump on and say, hey, I'm on this call, but don't ask for any, I'm not in front of my computer. I'm in transit. Okay. But I think there's a level of honesty that needs to come from the employee in order for the trust to come from the management as well. If you feel like things are being hidden, I'm in front of something's not loading. You know what? I can't. No, I can hear that you're in a car. Don't do that.
Yeah.
So
there's the things there you could probably get caught easy with.
Yeah, there's a lot of it. And to be honest, I think a lot of it is age and experience in your career. I think if you had given me remote ability 10 years ago, would I be as responsible as I am? You know what? When COVID started, was I as responsible with it as I am now? No, I wasn't. I didn't. I wanted to do laundry because I was home and it felt like it should be done. I felt lazy because I was in proximity to do it. I have learned now that I treat my workday as if I am in office. My house doesn't exist. It's just where I am.
Just where
So I think that there's a level of expectations that needs to be set by management. It needs to be truly upheld by management, but also a certain level of flexibility and respect to the employee if they're also giving it back to the company. You can't treat a remote employee the same way that you would treat an office employee because they're not, and it just doesn't work.
Doesn't work. Eric, I know you got something to say on that part about trust part.
I do. Trust is definitely a two-way street, and as Michael's saying, trust builds over time.
Yep.
I'm in a unique environment now where my team for the Eastern region is all based here in the Melbourne, Florida office, and they come into work 4 days a week. We do 1 day remote.
Right.
I also have a West Coast team that is pretty much all based out of Texas with one person based out of California, and they're fully remote. I don't require them to go into an office because I can't keep them away from the office politics of whatever that office is.
That makes a lot of sense.
So like I even moved, my team moved to an entirely different building, and I literally have to walk, across an entire parking lot to get to the executive wing where I spend most of my day. But trust is a huge thing, if a company trusts their employees, it goes a long way. If you don't know if you can trust your employees, there's software that can be put onto a computer.
I saw that.
I can go on to I'm on my computer right now. I can open up a browser window and I can sit there and I can look and watch one of my employees on their screen if they were working this late.
But don't you feel? Don't you feel that? Like to Kylie's point, I don't think Kylie would be able to handle that. Kylie would be like, "Get off."
I had an employer that did it, and it's the reason that I didn't stay. I won't. It's a different level of micromanaging. Like so you're not verbally micromanaging me, but now you're watching my keystrokes. They were able one day to say they forgot that I had a doctor's appointment. It was on their calendar, forgot that I had one, reached out to me and said, we were checking and it shows that you didn't send your first email until 10:30 this morning. Why?
Oh, that's what I thought.
That was my 2-week notice right there. I didn't have a backup plan. But I was like, I cannot come back to this environment and pretend that I'm going to work for you now because I won't. I'm going to be late. Everything is gone for me. It's just micromanaging in a different form.
I agree. And I can tell you, I can count on one hand how many times I've opened up that software because I actually trust my team. Now, if there's an issue that's going on, and we need to and we're investigating some things, that's where it would come into play. But I'll be honest with you, I hate opening up that software. I won't even look at it. I get a report that tells me how much of their productivity there was for that day. But I'm like, I don't even look at the report because it's not accurate. I'm right now inside of, Google Chrome because I use that to access my web-based ATS. this time would be considered productive. So it all depends. It's only as good. It's only as good as how you set it up. But I mean, for me, I believe that trust is definitely earned. I have had some employees that I did not trust whatsoever, because it was a different remote day every single week, and I was like, I need some structure of what's going on. So,
that's the hard part.
So I took away any remote capabilities for a good 2 months and started rebuilding the team. And I had a lot of building that I had to do. And now we break up the week. Wednesdays on Tuesdays we're all like, see you on Thursday, but we're always on. We're always working. So we've built that relationship. We've built that trust. I trust all of my employees extensively. Yeah.
Mike says, I guess it's a hub staff. Maybe you know that software. I'm not sure of that one there. What he was saying there is called hub staff. Mike, if employees gave much effort to remote work as they do searching on their cell phones all day, it'd be much different. Now I agree with what he's saying there.
I think, again, that is employee dependent. It goes back to what Eric and Jason have both said. It's not for everybody. Dude, you even said it. Like, you don't feel like you don't like it. It's not the same level of productivity. You're not dialed in the same way. I happen to be even more so. So I think it is very much dependent on the person. I guarantee you, I have a few people that I know I've seen let go where I am now, that they weren't doing anything. But that shows when I'm not.
Be a nightmare though, Jason. Even too, I can't even imagine that. Like, that's what I'm saying. An HR aspect of it, that's got to be a freaking nightmare.
Yeah. Now, and it is, because it's again, it's easy to set up some policies that could try and prevent that from happening or deter that from happening, where an employee loses, is not as productive, where they can in essence lose their remote rights, the right to be able to work remotely. And I like policies like that. However, where does someone go if they don't live within a proximity to a building, so if the answer is you need to performance manage them and possibly, terminate them for performance versus just, telling them they lose their privilege of working from home. I think there's this, again, companies, I said it before, companies are still navigating how to set these up, because there's definitely advantages to hiring remotely, where you can hire people, again, all over the country, have them working in different time zones, have the best talent because you're exposed to a greater talent pool that's not restricted to a certain geography around that location. So there's definitely advantages to remote, but there's also the disadvantages to having a remote workforce. Some of the things that we haven't touched on yet tonight is how to make sure that you're legally compliant in these settings, because
for security.
So I mean, so if I work in New Jersey, I live in New Jersey, and I decide to move to New York, that's okay, because the New Jersey and New York has a reciprocal tax agreement, right? What happens if I live in New Jersey and I decide to move to Ohio, but I never tell my employer?
Right.
Guess what? There's a different tax implication. The employer is taking out taxes for the state of New Jersey. When I go to file taxes, where am I filing my taxes? Is that employer even licensed to do business in the state of Ohio? In order to have an employee work out of a different state, you have to be licensed to operate in that state. So small businesses or even large businesses aren't always licensed to do business in those states. There's different unemployment law. There's different laws when it comes to minimum wage. There's different laws when it comes to sick pay and benefits entitlement. So
especially New York and California, they're crazy.
Disability benefits. There's tons and tons of different laws that are applicable based upon where you live. And then we've had employees actually go international on top of that, Dave. So they were working here, and then all of a sudden we find out, guess what? They're working in India, and we didn't even know. And so it's like, well, we're not licensed to do business in India. And then there's talk about different laws and requirements of a different country. So you definitely have to have policies that are set up to make sure that you can control what's going on, not necessarily prevent it, but to control it. So that way it's, the employer has the understanding, again, control over what's going on, but the approval process of what they can allow. So a lot to consider when it comes up to these policies. If you ask me my opinion of what I like, I always think permanency and flexibility. So whether or not you trust someone or you don't trust someone, is that a permanent state of mind with that person? No, it should be a flexible state of mind. Someone can earn trust, they can lose trust. It's not permanency. Same thing when it comes to these work-life situations of working in office or home. If the job is flexible enough to allow either, then I think the employer should have policies that are flexible enough to allow either. So I think that I always talk about that on the show, is setting up things that there is no one size fit all. Kylie mentioned plenty of times tonight, Eric mentioned it too, about trusting your employees. What's good for one person might not be good for the other, even if they are in the same exact role. So do you have policies that are flexible enough to allow for that, to say, you're performing, you have performed, you're a high performer, and I can trust you to work at home. You, every time you've worked at home, you haven't performed, you haven't shown yourself, and either you're going to get performance manager, or you're going to come back into the office. So do you have a policy that supports that? That's the flexibility I'm trying to say.
Well, there was two different things they were talking about when I was looking at, saying, like you said, like Kylie, if you're trusted to listen, you're just going to get your job done, you're working remote. Now there is remote positions where they do have the structure where you have to work the 8 hours. Like, it would be no difference. I'm supposed to be at my desk from, say, 9 to 5:30. I'm there. But then the other model would be to that person, I believe that's more of a trust, like saying, like with Kylie, like you were talking about, getting your job done. So I think that comes down to just clarification and communication of what the responsibilities are, because I would want to know. I'd be like, all right, do I have to sit in front of my computer? Because I'm still boiling over the part that I didn't know that they use software for that stuff. I'd be like, if I turn that on and I'd see that, I'd be like, what's the sense of being at home? Because I feel no trust.
You don't know, Dave.
Don't know.
Oh, you don't know. Oh,
I didn't even know that my employer, they don't have to tell you. There's no notification. You are on their property, their laptop. I did not know until the day that they messed up their scheduling and were like, why didn't you send in? I was like, what? How do you know this? And then they had to tell me, and I was like, I can't do that. Like, that doesn't work for me. Yeah, they don't.
The thing I do is just I'll have my hair done. That's it. If they want to look at somebody who had a hair done on a Friday, that's about it.
Yeah. Nope. It was, I have to answer this because it made me laugh when I saw it. Kenny, what is in your ginormously huge cup? I'm drinking tea because it is never, ever, ever cold in Florida, and it is cold. And I am very excited about herbal tea at night because it is warm and lovely.
Oh, Jesus. Eric, that's what you and Kenny. Eric, that has got to be something for even a manager now, too. It's like even yourself, being talent acquisition, managing the people, to where that could drive you just as crazy with being in the office, like not knowing what the person's doing. I guess if they're underperforming, how do you go out? How do you manage that person? Is it by deadlines? The same thing as being in the office, I guess,
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you look at KPIs, and I've always said I know Kylie's very familiar with me saying the path to success. We knew exactly, if we needed to hire this many people, here's the path that you can take to get there, because mathematically we just did it with all the conversion rates. But at the end of the day, I don't look at the entire path if you're hitting the number at the end. Right. So, but if you're not hitting that number, I'm going to start looking to see, where did it fall off? Was it the hiring managers not hiring the people that we were sending? Was it you not doing enough interviews? Was it you not sourcing enough, trying to find as many candidates and applicants? So you manage to the numbers and you manage the person. You have to understand the way that they work. Like, I've got somebody on my team right now. He told me that, every day at lunch, he's taking an extended lunch because he was in a car accident and he needs to go to the chiropractor every day. Great. I trust you. Just, we're all adults. At the end of the day, I always tell everybody on my team, listen, we are all adults. If you need to go while you're working from home and go walk the dog for 20 minutes, I trust that you're going to come back and you're going to continue working. If you need to go into the grocery store in the middle of the day because a child needed something, or needed to run to the school or anything, at the end of the day, we're all adults. Get your 8 hours in. That's all I'm asking. Perform for me for 8 hours. I don't care if you start work at 10 and work until 6 or 7 o'clock, or whatever, based off of your time zone. I've told that plenty of times. Kylie's probably heard it from me when I was at Sears. I would tell anybody that was working California or Hawaii for that matter. I said, listen, we're all adults. Take breaks during the day. You know, I'm not going to schedule meetings in the morning hours because I know that you're going to start later.
Right.
That
was one of the things.
Yeah. I feel that if you treat people like an adult, you don't ever have to micromanage them. You don't have to ride them. You can trust them because at the end of the day, we're all adults.
Yeah. And that's Jason, I can imagine on the disciplinary actions, even I don't know. I thought it would be so different to where do you still do virtual meetings for disciplinary actions? They still do that, right? I'm sure, right? That can be done virtual. There's no difference, right?
Correct. No difference. What can be a little bit more complicated is collecting assets if you're going to terminate somebody who's remote. So that's always fun. And, being able to collect that stuff back. But yeah, no, disciplinary actions are done remote or same done remotely. Onboarding and training can be somewhat a little bit more trickier, right? It's
right.
Again, technology has helped a lot with this. So 10 years ago when people were working remotely or even just trying to train each other and they're not in the same location, before, we were using Skype before, a long time ago, I think. And even before that, we were using, other things to try, and you're trying to present the screen and now you could take over someone's computer and everything like that. So you could really interactively show them how to train. But yeah, I don't think that disciplinary, I think we've overcome most of those obstacles from a technology standpoint. That's what I'm trying to say. But there'll always be a little bit of obstacles with getting someone their assets, helping them, their internet's down. Well, if their internet's down, what are they doing? They're just sitting behind a computer, not doing anything. If they were in person, maybe they could do something.
That's what hotspots are for.
Yeah, exactly. So,
the internet thing, it doesn't work anymore. That's what coffee shops and hotspots are for. If somebody says their internet is down and they can't do their job, they're full of it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, Kylie, taking one step further, have you ever been to have you been to Celebration before? Mm-hmm. You know that entire city has got Wi-Fi?
Well, I know. Yes, I do. And a lot of the places do. But I actually, no matter where I work from, because I work on government accounts, I cannot use any kind. It has to be my hotspot or my home Wi-Fi that's been approved.
Yeah. But I'm commenting to your point. It's not an excuse anymore because there's an entire city here in the Central Florida area that is entirely Wi-Fi.
And tell me where you can't find a Starbucks, please.
Right.
Where do you live? Where do you live that you can't find a single one because they've got free Wi-Fi?
Or a McDonald's. Take it to McDonald's. McDonald's has Wi-Fi, yes.
I didn't know
McDonald's Wi-Fi, jeez. Mike says, Jason, when you hire remote out of state, doesn't that take revenue from your state? Yeah, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it takes revenue several ways, right? Look at the boom in the economy of Florida due to COVID, and look at some of the areas that have suffered. Look at New York City, how people just exited New York City. The amount of money that has just left that city because of people relocating to nicer climates. Look at New Jersey, where I live, and people that have just trying to get out of New Jersey from a tax perspective because of cost of living, but also the boom in the southeastern part of the U.S. that have seen the influx of folks from kind of where we live, Dave. So yes, there's definitely a revenue shift, and there's been an economical shift when it due to COVID and people being able to work remotely. I know a guy who works, he works in Cancun. He lives or Playa del Carmen. He runs two businesses out of Playa del Carmen and flies back once a month, but he's just, people do that. They're all over the world now where they can operate off of boats and stuff like that. They travel the world. As they're traveling, they're working. It's just awesome. It's just all, I always try and look at things from a fresh and a positive perspective, not a restrictive and a negative perspective. But again, you got to move forward. We have to progress as an economy, as a human beings. We just have to do it smart and such that it's fair to everybody. You have to take into account equality, and then take into account the consequences of some of these of this is, we're going to have shifts, we're going to have change, we're going to have industries that take a big hit, states that take a big hit because of this. You can't say, no, you can't do that. You gotta figure out how to work with it. So.
Do you think companies change their pay rates because of remote work?
Well, I think pay transparency is driving that a lot more than remote work. I think so. I think that's, and which again is a great thing. It's a whole nother topic we could talk about on another show. Pay transparency. Granted, we've always had not always. For quite some time we've had Equal Pay Act. I'm not sure how well that is done with driving pay, but pay transparency I think is having a huge impact on it. But again, going back to your point, I'm not. I don't know if COVID and working remotely has driven a huge difference in pay. However, what I would say is if I can make, a throw number, if I can make $100,000 a year in New Jersey, or I can make $100,000 a year in Wyoming, my money goes a lot further in Wyoming, right?
That's what I was going to bring that up. So, how the different states based for pay.
To that point, I think there is a big thing, a big impact when it comes to that.
Eric, do you think?
I got a buddy
that?
On.
Oh, what was this? Oh, what's this? A long one. Here we go, Jason.
Mr. Jason Ehrenberg. So Jason,
you want to read that?
Yeah, sure. The problem with judging performance on a number that you're judging output, not on inputs. Results are a lagging indicator. In contrast, the people may not be working to the expectations from a behavioral standpoint or inputs, may be hidden by good results, but with bad behaviors. In-person allows performance management more effectively. Also, when you're solely remote, the interpersonal relationship building is a very large company is often difficult. When new leaders come in, it's way more difficult. So, we used to work with Jason. I've worked with Jason for quite some time. Excellent.
I knew that name looked familiar.
Yeah. Excellent person, individual, and personally and professionally. And he has a lot of good points there. I mean, when, come look at it from an interview standpoint. When interviewing someone, I always still want to get my eyes on someone. And if I can put my, do it in person, absolutely. And same thing when it comes to, again, just managing people, being able to manage them in an in-person environment. Yeah, that's always going to be a preference. I think there's a lot of great points in that. But he also makes the point of performance as a lagging indicator. So we always talk about trying to coach in the real time. So being able to see and observe something real time as it's happening is definitely a better way to coach and manage somebody for performance versus just looking at a report that shows their performance for the prior month or the prior week or so forth. So a lot of great points that he puts up there.
That is, and they also were talking about training online. Training online isn't no difference now. I mean, for doing that remote, they were talking about that, and I'm thinking there's no difference. You're sitting in front of your laptop at work, or you're sitting at home. You're doing the same test. Now, I will say, the video resume screening. There's a company called Duckanow that I really promoted, and you would sit there and you say, okay, they're answering questions. They're doing a skill test. Well, what would happen while you're doing that test is they don't know it, but there again, the software takes a picture. So you'll know by the end when you're done taking that test for Excel, whatever you're taking it for, it's going to show you failed because you weren't the one taking it. And it snapped it. So at the end of you could have your wife take it, you could have your brother, anybody that was smarter doing that. That was one of the things. And a lot of people got caught doing that. Was it? Yeah, they got crafty about putting somebody else in front of it. But like you said, Eric, the software, I'm sure there's a lot more software that even watches a lot more things than that. I'm sure.
There is. And, the only time you really need to look at software like that is if you don't know how to trust your employees.
Right.
I think it's a big waste of time to sit there and really sit and watch somebody. I got other things I can do. I'm an adult. They're an adult. We can go for this. To that comment right there, companies will end up paying more for people to be in office. That's not necessarily true. It all depends on the position, to be honest. I can pay somebody, X amount of dollars, for one type of position, but I have to pay, way more, just because they live in San Francisco, and I need them working from Melbourne, but I have to pay them more based off of where they're at. So
correct. But I like that point though a lot though, because it's not necessarily what the companies are willing to pay, but what's the employee's expectation for getting paid. So if I have a remote role that is in Melbourne, or I have to drive to Orlando every day to be in person, am I going to want to get paid a lot more because of that travel expense? So
I don't think
I was working at Sears, and someone had approached me to work in an in-person role 5 days a week, And then I figured it out how much it's going to, what's my time traveling an hour each way and a commute, my expense on the car, tolls, everything like that. And,
but they're not going to base pay on that. They're not going to base pay on that, right?
They're not going to base pay, but what I was saying is like, well, I need $20,000 more a year just to make that even worth it for me. So whether or not the company's paying that, but guess what? If they're going to pull in that talent, Dave, if they're losing talent, look at the nurses right now. So the big thing with nurses going on, nurses are leaving the profession, school teachers are leaving the profession, and what are they having to do? They got to pay those teachers more. They got to pay those nurses more because they have to be in person for those jobs. So those jobs by default are going to cause, you're going to have to start paying them more money for people that want to be a teacher, be a nurse, or to remain in those jobs. I mean, granted, the nurses have had a whole slew of other issues with COVID, but there's a lot of different options for nurses now, where there's traveling nurses, virtual nurses, different types of nurse positions.
You can do it right online to see a doctor. You can just call.
Exactly. Telemedicine has had a big impact.
$40.
In order for those hospitals and school districts to have people still come into those buildings every day, they're by default, they're going to have to raise their wages probably, or they're going to offset it with some other things.
To the same flip point, though, if I'm fully remote, I can ask for more money because I need you to pay for the power that I'm now drawing, my internet, my home office. If you're, as a remote worker, I can demand that be part of my pay. So, a company will end up paying more for that.
Talking about the state laws
more money
again,
because of the pay,
because of the office. I think it's a little bit more of a stretch to say, you need to be compensated for your home office. But what I will say is there are certain states like California, of course, where you have to get paid by the employer, reimbursed for certain costs when it comes to
Wi-Fi,
to some of those expenses and so forth. So
California also has
having your own cell phone and stuff like that. So there is definitely state laws that go well above and beyond of what has to happen, which goes back to the point of where are our employees working and where do you want them to work, allow them to work from. Sorry, but
Kylie,
a lot of
where do you get all your supplies, Kylie?
Oh no! Well, before you were talking about the teachers and the nurses, and I was like, this is a whole nother conversation. But the reality is, prior to remote being a bit available, those people needed higher pay anyways. So that's just a whole nother. I feel like that is just not fair. Like teachers should be making doctors' salaries. I have 2 children and it's exhausting. I don't know how on earth they do it. They deserve a lot more money. That was kind of where I was going with it. But the reality is, I think, and you guys proved my point before I was even going to make it, is you're playing devil's advocate on that, Eric. The reality is the employee is going to demand what the employee feels like they're worth. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't matter for me. I don't care if you're telling me I'm remote or if you're telling me I'm going into office. My expectation of what I have worked to be worth and what I know I'm going to bring and add in value to a company is not going to change.
Right.
Well, here's a good point. Let's throw this on Dave's lap. Dave, how much would it cost you to get some of your work done instead of through Fiverr, where a lot of international employees are working on work versus having that done in the U.S.?
That video for $35 and a $5 tip, that would probably cost me over a couple $100 for that to be made here. Yeah.
So Mike's point here is very well taken. That remote has driven the demand for talent globally, and now we're competing globally for talent. There's a lot of small businesses that use VAs, virtual assistants, where you don't have somebody that's in person, and you pick up the phone for customer service, and that person's in Costa Rica, Mexico, Bogota, Colombia, Philippines, India. And they're getting paid, $5 to $7 an hour, maybe, if that.
It's high. I've seen bills come across for me. It's like $4.
Yeah. So and that's what I'm saying. And versus here, try getting someone to work doing that for under 20, because again, McDonald's is paying 15. You can the bus drivers in my town are making $25 an hour right now. So
they have to be there.
So I agree with that 100%.
No, I agree with that. And then
I agree. Hold on, I agree with that to a certain extent. It all depends on the position, really. There's certain types of positions that I'm not going to be fighting a global talent on.
Correct.
So I think it's all based off of position, the type of work to what you're going to have to battle. I can say 90% of the workload that I have on my team, I'm not competing with international, and global talent. Now, higher level positions like VPs and controllers and things like that, absolutely, I could be.
Right. Charlene. I said it right.
Charlene. Yes, you did very good.
I did it. Said, hi, Charlene. Thanks for watching the show here. That's where I wanted to talk to you about one thing. Loneliness, boredom, and burnout, Kylie. Did you see that? I mean, some of these are real issues now, and these were up-to-date issues that saying people working remote have to learn loneliness and boredom. I don't know. I don't. When you hear stuff like that, I guess that's some of the cons of working from remote. I don't know.
I think a lot of that is the cons of the company you're with. I don't ever feel lonely, ever. I have a really, really great team, and
says that so straight face, don't she? I never.
I don't feel lonely, and I haven't from the day that I started here.
Yeah.
Now, can I say that I have? I don't know if lonely is the word that I would use, but disconnected. Have I felt disconnected? Sure. Not where I am right now, but there have been places in between Sears and where I am now that disconnect was a very real thing. And no matter how hard I tried, I think a lot of that, though, kind of fell to the company. I don't think they did a good job of building their teams. And so the team camaraderie and the ability to be friendly and get to know those, they didn't do a good job of being mindful of the personalities that were coming in because they didn't have to, because they weren't sitting in the same office.
Right.
And that, I think, is a fall short on the company's part. You said loneliness, boredom.
Yeah, I don't get bored.
No.
I mean,
yeah, I don't ever get bored. I mean, I feel like I am, again, I can't work 60, 70 hours and be bored. So no. Burnout. Yes.
Do you think there should be some kind of training
for
remote workers?
As soon as you get companies that actually know how to do it, then they can train people. But they have to figure it out first.
That's got to be a thing, though. I mean, because it would solve a little bit about communication. Because out of all these pages, it comes down to that. What I believe it's everything we talked about is the trust. It comes down to trust.
But I think a lot of that is management style too. So if I'm being honest, I don't think the training has to happen in remote work. I think, unfortunately, oftentimes people are promoted to management without being properly trained in how to be a manager. It's not enough to be really, really good at your job. You have to know how to lead a team and lead by example and not be a part of a team, lead a team. And those are very different things. And I don't think that the trust problem is 9 times out of 10 in the hands of the employee. I think it's the management. And my experience is it has been, at least. And obviously I don't speak for the masses, but I have personally had that experience. I think trust is probably what it boils down to. But again, that goes back to my prior statement. You can't train people how to be remote until you have a management and a company that knows how to run things remotely. And it's kind of all the same thing. And your third one was burnout.
Yeah, they're talking about burnout is a big problem now. And I'm like, I guess the burnout may be the hours if you're working 20, 30, 40, 50 hours.
Demands. Again, I think it comes down to management, right? Like Eric said at 5:15, his boss is like, what are you still doing here? Like, go home. At 5 o'clock, if I am on a call with, and not even just my management, my counterparts. Are like, oh, I'm an hour ahead of you. It's 5 for you now. We'll talk about it tomorrow. That is the culture that's been created. And so no, the burnout isn't there, because if I'm working those extra hours, it's choice. I want to be doing those things. I am not being forced into something like that. And even Eric was like, put in your 8 hours. I don't even have a boss that way. And I have so much respect for it. If I am killing it, and in 4 hours, my stuff is taken care of, cool. Yeah. Like, pay attention. If somebody needs you, you should be available. But if you've handled everything, you don't need to be glued just to say you worked 8 hours. So no, I don't think that burnout exists across the board. I think a lot of times, again, that's a management style of 11 o'clock at night. I need you now. No, you don't. No.
Wow.
I'm not answering the phone at this point, unless it's the CEO of my company.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that comes back to kind of that mentality of being a salaried employee, right? So you work to be salaried so that you have that security and you don't have to punch in and out. But then there's an expectation of those extended periods that you're on the clock all the time because you're salaried. And I think that needs to be kind of an aligned expectation too. But again, I think that falls somewhat to the candidate, the employee during their candidate process.
Right.
Ask those questions. If you know, like I know for me, if you demand that I am from this time to this time glued to my computer, you must work I know that's not a place for me because I end up working my tail off, but I want to be able to show up I want to pick up my kids and drop them off at school. That's important to me. I want to show up for my son's soccer practice. Does it matter? It's not a game. Not really, but it matters to me.
Right.
I have set my boundaries and my expectations. And if I don't ask those questions during my candidacy, then it's really not the employer's fault for having an expectation that I didn't clarify during mine when I knew that was a boundary for me. So I think that there's a lot of the candidate process that if that were more clear, a lot of these aftermarket problems would not exist.
Do you see
Kylie,
that?
I just want to bounce off of that real quick because I've learned over the years, interviews go both ways. So when I'm actually interviewing people for any position in the company, because I want to find out if they're going to be a good culture fit for us, I'm not actually the one that's recruiting these people. I've got a team that does it, but I actually say I believe interviews go both ways. It's your turn. You ask me questions. What do you want to know? And because at that point, you can figure out what some of those clear expectations. If I was interviewing Kylie and I said that, she would say, how do you feel that my son has, soccer practice? I have to be there. I'll have my computer with me. I'll have my phone. I'm reachable. I'm attainable. Is that going to be an issue? I'm going to say no, because, as long as she's been performing, during that whole time and she's been performing. So I think expectations big time, just like what Kylie said. It's a two-way street in an interview. And if anybody's out there and they're listening to this right now and you're interviewing for a job and you're not asking questions of the employer, shame on you.
Yeah.
Jason, and then I'm sure we're over an hour. Wow. That was tonight.
Always.
Jesus. On that note, Jason, we'll end up ending up after this here. Do you see the employee handbook getting bigger and bigger? The HR handbook, the company guide. I still think that's got to grow, right?
It's just a matter of fact of the different laws that are coming out, Dave. It's getting more and more difficult to stay on top of things, to manage, nationwide types of organizations and account for different things that are coming on. But hey, we've had lots of different laws that have come in over the years, right? There's been tons and tons of different laws, but yes, there does seem to be an escalation of the intensity of the different laws that have been coming over the last 5 or 10 years specifically. But one thing that we didn't touch on again, just on tonight is, the whole sustainability standpoint of remote versus hybrid in person, and is it having an impact on just people personally when it comes to health wise and, not getting out of the house. And, again, there's mental health, but there's also physical health of just being somewhat active. But then there's a flip side of that being, the amount of fossil fuel usage was down, was huge down very much, I can't find the right word to say right now, but it was a significant increase in the use of fossil fuel during COVID. Right. So there was a lot of great impacts that came out of COVID. I loved jumping on the road. There was never already traffic on there. Now the traffic's back, especially on Wednesdays for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe I was in the office that day. But yeah, there's a lot of other stuff that again, that has had an impact on remote and in person, just in our normal daily lives as well. So we didn't touch on nearly enough topics within this tonight.
Never go through. I get all these damn trees, and I never I never go through.
Listen, I'm just happy that you put down that was one topic tonight. You know, there's other nights that you sit there and you put down like 17 different topics scrolling along the bottom, and we barely touch on one. So I feel like we succeeded tonight.
Guys, before we end this, I do want this comment pulled up. You can get a native English speaking recruiter in Nairobi, Kenya for $30,000 a year who speaks English as well as anyone on this. Mike, yes, you can. But it goes back to the statement that I made about building a team properly.
Right.
It's the same thing as building. You should be building a team remotely the same way that you would in office. And if those hours are not the same, if that person is not on your team calls, if you don't have if they can't have that understanding or that ability to interact truly and organically and healthily with their hiring managers. So yes, can you save dollars on your recruiters? Sure.
Yeah. Are
you going to save money on your bottom line? Maybe, but are you going to make as much money because now your symbiotic relationships internally have just completely gone askew? Probably. So I think at some point you have to decide where it's worth spending money. And if you're going to choose a remote environment, then you have to be responsible with it. Hiring somebody because you can cut $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 off of somebody's paycheck, I don't necessarily think is the way to create a thriving company.
It's not always a good thing at all. You know, there's certain jobs that, I believe you can outsource. That's not a problem. But it does go back to what you're saying, Kylie. If you can't build the team. Now, I did have at a previous company, I did have somebody that was a sourcer, and they were in India. He worked and mirrored our hours. So it's in the middle of the night for him and he's awake. So he made the choice for himself that he wanted to do this job. So he basically sacrificed time from his family so that he can do this. So yes, I do agree. You know, I agree with Mike. Yeah, you can do it, but you just need to make sure you're building it the right way. You know, there's a right way and there's a wrong way to build a remote team. And if you're doing it just to save costs, that's not the right way.
Kenny says, I can never replace myself. I'm not good. That's what Kenny said. Kenny, that's a good one.
Comment all night.
Yeah. Kenny, everybody's replaceable. You might look in the mirror tomorrow morning and go, you're fired.
I know. Sure, right? Yeah, or he's eliminated from LinkedIn. He's answering from Facebook. Like you said, there's a lot of subject on this and a lot of discussion that we didn't even touch. I'm just going to start saving all these books.
I think you said.
I mean, I want Kenny's comment to go down. All right. What are they going to ask? So, but on that
note, comments going down in the history books there.
Yeah, Kenny, remember, God manages all of us. We're nothing without him. There you go, Mike. That's good. All right, team. I guess, Jason, you're not here next week, are you?
I am not here. If we're doing it at the same time next week, I can't make it. So
okay, well, we can either talk at different date or we can talk different time, whatever works.
Yeah, whatever you guys want to do.
I wanted to hit the subject of unions. I wanted to hit the.
Well, don't do that next week, Dave. But that's why we're a team.
Don't do that with me. I'm not in on that one.
Yeah, don't do that one without me.
I actually cannot be part of that talk, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, right. That's true. Yeah, you don't even want. Oh my God. Yeah, who can talk about it and who can't, right? So, all right, everybody. I know we're going to talk afterwards. So, Kylie with her big cup, and I think that's what I learned from you tonight. Your big cup, and she drinks tea. So at least it's not wine. That's really good. Right?
No, not during the week. I love wine, but I can't do it. I've gotten old enough at this point where more than 2 or 3 glasses of wine and my hangover is like 3 days. I just can't do it anymore.
And that's it, right? Jesus. All right. On that note, I'm going to switch these two just to see what it's like. Look at that. See?
Why?
I just had to do that. All right. Good night, everybody. Well, you can do it too.
Oh, Dave's not in the upper left.
Yeah. Now I got it. Yeah. That does look weird when you're used to.
It's weird. I know.
I have a feeling that there's going to be
now it's going to be a
game.
Jason and Dave. Yeah. Everybody's doing that. So, all right. On that note, everybody, we'll see you next week.